Perhaps it's something lost in translation, but to the folks here in the colonies, we still have a hard time understanding the concept of a BMW with an engine that goes this way. To us, BMW engines go this way, preferably with 6 cylinders. This one is 4 cylinders with 228 horsepower and 258 pounds of torque. There is a more powerful engine on offer, 301 horsepower with 332 pounds of torque. Now those numbers should sound very familiar to you, and they kind of give away that there is a certain bit of the Commonwealth here in this BMW by way of Oxford. Let's cover some of the more prudent details. BMW Group calls this the modular B platform or something along those lines. To you and I, that means this is a BMW that is built off of a front-wheel drive mini platform. We could argue back and forth about that all we want, but let's go through some of the facts. This technically is not a front-wheel drive vehicle because whether it's this 228 Gran Coupe or the 235 Gran Coupe, they're all fitted with an all-wheel drive system that could send up to 50% of the torque to the rear wheels. It does that through an 8-speed torque converter automatic. Now, what's the impact on fuel economy with an all-wheel drive system? Well, it's 23, 33, 27 combined, and then there's the performance figures. So 0 to 60 is 6 seconds. If it was a 235, it would be 4.7 seconds. Top speed in the 228 is 130. If it had the performance tires, 151. And in the 235, top speed there is 155. The other important number is about 3,500 pounds. That's what this 228 with a couple of options weighs. A little bit of delay there, and we get some induction, and okay, it's got a little bit of power. Going around the turn there, maybe slow down just a little bit, because remember, this is most of the power through the front wheels. Power delivery is pretty good here, but then again, are we surprised? We've driven this engine in a number of other BMW family products. Works well there. I would argue works incredibly well here. Don't really need to shoehorn myself into the back seat in order to demonstrate that it's kind of tight back here. Rather, our time is better focused on understanding a 2 Series Gran Coupe in terms of size as it translates to cars most people would know. Now, the first thing that pops into my brain are very fancy versions of serial production D-segment cars. Think like Hyundai Sonata, Toyota Camry. And the reason why I say that, the base price of this is the fully loaded price of those. So taking the shortest version of that, which is the Hyundai Sonata in terms of wheelbase, that's 6 inches longer than this. Then you look at a Honda Civic, for grins and giggles, that has a wheelbase that is 1 inch longer. Then the car that this is based on, the Mini, this one has a wheelbase that's 4 inches longer. And then that does translate to design. Like you and I have spent a lot of time talking about proportions, but it's hard to wrap proportions around a shorter car. Now in a Mini, you don't really have that problem because it has its own proportions that work incredibly well, that bulldog look. But here, they've taken the proportions of a larger BMW sedan, lines and all, and wrapped it around the Mini platform. So rather than me kind of pontificate as a design nerd, I'm gonna turn this around to you guys. Did this work or did it not work? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. Rather important note here, no adjustable dampers here, and it's not a function of this being an inexpensive car, because it's not. It's just the way the car is set up, whether it's this or the 235 version. However, the 235 version has stiffer dampers. That being the case, you and I are pushing pretty hard here, and it still has a good amount of control over pitch, squat, dive, and roll. Is it an M2? Not at all. But for the type of car, front-wheel drive biased vehicle, there's good control. Now, if you dig into the documentation of this thing, it shares a little bit with an i3, so there's a dynamic stability control, which both cars have. But then there's an anti-slip system here, which is on top of that. And in an i3, it's there, obviously, because of the amount of torque in really a lighter car that's tall and has a higher center of gravity. this, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it's here because it's a front-wheel drive biased car that has all-wheel drive. That's the only way they come. You can send up to 50% of the power back to the rear wheels. And after spending a good amount of time with this thing, I strongly believe it's the combination of the slip system and the dynamic control that almost erases the fact that this is a front-wheel drive vehicle. Now, huge asterisk there. It may look like a BMW on the inside, even on the outside to some extent. But the reality is, you're driving a Mini, because it's based on a Mini. And you gotta ask yourself, is that a bad thing? Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Options game, with today's contestant, an entirely different kind of BMW. The 2020 BMW 228i xDrive Gran Coupe for a manufacturer suggested retail price of $37,500. Now, before we press on to the individual options, I do need to point out some of the stuff that's fitted to standard. You know that flash anthracite headliner we see on like $80,000 BMWs? That's fitted to standard here. And then most importantly, and I believe that you and I had something to do with this, Apple CarPlay, and not just Apple CarPlay, wireless Apple CarPlay is fitted as standard. Now the standalone options. The first two, they really confuse me. They're all about color and trim. Storm Bay Metallic looks stunning in the sunlight, and it should for $1,200. And then there's the Mocha Perforated Dakota Leather Interior. This isn't just about the color, the texture, magnificent. And it really should be for $1,450. And here's my quarrel with this. That's almost 10% of the base price of this car. I don't have a problem with it in an expensive car, but in this, maybe red with a tan interior might be a better choice, or more prudent choice. Then, first of two packages, the M Sport package, which is made up of the M Sport steering wheel, 18-inch wheels, and the rear spoiler. And you better belt in for this, $4 grand. There's gotta be something missing. Then the premium package, this is more of a value, kind of transforms the car. It adds things like a heated seat, I should say seats, heated steering wheel, the active LED headlights, the panoramic sunroof, which is huge, and then the biggest thing here is the head-up display. And where the other one was $4 grand for 2 bits, this is all that stuff and more for $3,050. That I would suggest. Then the only other thing I would add here is the destination charge, $995, for a total suggested retail price of $48,195. A couple of various notes. Not a great engine sound. Matter of fact, it's kind of buzzy. So let's go back into automatic mode. Number 2, the wireless charger. Love the fact that this does have wireless CarPlay and a wireless charger. However, this one's kind of got a clip. And for those of you that are OCD like me, you have to take your phone out of the case in order for it to fit and charge while driving. And believe you me, I have tried to shoehorn a thing in there and there's no way I can get it to charge. So that would be something I'd love to see a bit of a change on. And then excuse me for beating a dead horse here, there's a bit of a theme clash here. Like you look here, BMW, but those seats directly out of a Mini. The reality is the BMW lineup really doesn't need this. They'll sell them because it's an inexpensive BMW, but it doesn't really need it. What they need is an inexpensive EV. Because in reality, people don't really care if an EV is $35,000 or $50,000. They will buy them as proven by a certain manufacturer that is based in Fremont, California. Now, there really is no competitor that's selling like that right now. However, if one were to come along that looked like this and had the porcelain roundel, I gotta believe people would be interested. But there's a catch to that. It can't be like the Mini with 100 miles of range. And here's a package that we've learned is 4 inches longer in wheelbase. The overall length is almost a foot longer. So there's gotta be some room there to package a larger battery that could at least do 200 miles of range. If I'm getting greedy, 250. But here's the catch. It's gotta be the same price as the one here, meaning not above $48,000. If BMW could do that, it would be a moonshot, and they would sell every one of them they could build.